Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. So today, this is an exclusive Substacks video, and I thought we could do a little demo of what I do in my Wednesday art classes that I'm starting to offer now. They are bilingual lessons, French being the base language, and then you can either pick English, Spanish, or German, and you learn how to paint and draw and use different materials while also practicing and learning a language, which I think is the best way to learn a language. So this month's theme is all about flowers. And so I thought that I would do a little demo of painting flowers. I have two types of paper. One is cold press and the other one is hot press. And so I thought we could do two different little motifs. So I'm gonna start with the hot press. This is Arches Grain Satiné. And I love this. And the difference is that this one has very little texture to the page, while the other one that I have, which is a Canson Grain Fine, is a cold press. And this one has a bit of a texture to it. Has a bit of a texture. And I love both. I personally love using both of them, but they give different textures and different feels and different end results. So we're gonna first start with the hot press. Now, I love painting flowers with watercolors. I absolutely love it. And I also love using pencils, colored pencils with watercolors. And there are different types of pencils that I use to do my watercolors, which I will show you guys here, my different pencils. All right, 1, 2, 3. So I have 6 different pencils that I like to use when creating watercolors. There is the Derwent Lightfast that I absolutely love. I like to do my line art with these. There is the Derwent Drawing, which are a creamier type of pencil. And I like to use these once the watercolors are dry on the page and adding some detail. There is the Derwent Graphite Tint that I like to use when the page is still kind of humid to the touch and it leaves this really nice texture and feel because it is water soluble, but it has graphite in it, so it gives a very muted and beautiful tint. This is a luminescence. This is from Caran d'Ache, and I also use it just like the drawing or just like the Lightfast as either line art or after once it's dry to add details. Here's the Derwent Intense that I use also when the page is still wet. And then this is a Kohinoor watercolor pencil that I like to use as well when the page is wet. So these are the 6 different pencils that I use. So for this class, I also offer an online option, and this here is the online demo of what it's like to download and view my online lessons. So what you will need if you want to participate are colored pencils. If you don't have water-soluble pencils, it's not a big deal. You don't need them. But just like either a colored pencil or a pencil to do the line art, and watercolors, different size paintbrushes, and your watercolors and water, and a rag. Always have a rag nearby. So I am going to look for a reference picture. I tend to use Pinterest all the time. That is like my go-to for finding reference pictures. And I have a couple picked out, and I saved them on a board. I have many boards. And I was thinking of doing something simple, nothing crazy. And there's a little ladybug in this image. And I absolutely love ladybugs. They are my favorite. They're really easy, not complex to paint or draw. And so I thought this was a great way to start the lesson. So I'm going to be using, another really fun pencil that I have are these rainbow pencils. You can find them in any art shop. They're really cheap. They're probably in the craft section. Some of them are jumbo size, but this one here is a very thin one that I think my daughter or son got as a gift, and then I've just been keeping it here with my pencils. It just looks really nice when drawing things out. So I thought it would be fun, and let's use this one. All right, so lighting has changed a bit. I hope that's not affecting anything. So I'm just going to start lightly drawing, and you can see how I'm holding the pen, so I'm holding it in the back. I'm going to lightly draw where I want things to be, and I'm just paying attention to the shapes and then going from there. Now, if you pay attention to how stems come out, some of them are continuous and others you see a little bit of the growth there. So it's really, flowers can be a complex subject to approach, but it's all just like looking at it through shapes and lines. That's all it is. And paying attention where one line starts and the other one begins. And I love this Arches paper. It is expensive paper. It is. But it feels so nice and spongy. I don't know. It is ideal to get good paper. If you are thinking about, well, what should I invest in? I would say paper, because it really will create different effects depending on what type of paper you have. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of cheapish papers that I actually prefer to use for different mediums. For example, when it comes to acrylics, I love the cheap paper, the crinkly paper. And I know a lot of artists that actually prefer to use cheap paper. There's this one artist that I follow online. Her name is Sandy Hester. She's an American artist. And she also loves cheap paper. So when it comes to creating your sketch, you don't want to spend that much time because you're going to be covering it. And also with watercolors, you can decide if you want to add more detail. And also the nice thing with watercolors is I like to add ink lines at the end or a dark pencil. That's also a lot of fun. So here, these are just little budding plants in the background. The reason why I picked flowers as a theme for May is because of spring. I absolutely love spring. It is my favorite season. I just love to see all the light greens and purples. It's just absolutely it's a breath of fresh air. It gives you just, joy. For me, winters are really hard. I don't do well with the cold. I hate feeling cold. I get angry when I feel cold, actually. It's not a pleasant feeling. So here again, I'm just looking at the shapes. I do love to draw bugs. One of my favorite things to draw. He has this wings still out. They hadn't collected yet within his little thing. And it's fun to use this rainbow pencil. It gives a lot of whimsy to the line since you don't really know what's going to come out. And I don't know if I'm going to draw all the flowers. There are quite a lot in here. And it can feel overwhelming when you have so much in the page. But I will be drawing this big one here. And I'm trying to look at where things are placed. And so the center of the flower, this big purpley one, is at a slight diagonal to the white area of the ladybug. So I'm just going to draw a small little circle and then a bigger circle around it. And then there are these triangular shapes. Create someone like a star. And then from there, you know where the petals are going to be because they kind of meet with these triangular bits. It's a nice big flower. And you can make the petals more interesting by creating little overlappy bits or having another flower be on top of it. Here. And it's okay if you make mistakes. It just, adds interest to the composition. And now here's another one. And this is more to the side. But it still has those little spiky triangular things. And so here's one petal that was overlapping this one. So you can barely see. And this one's more to the side. Okay. And then here are some darker areas. So to make an interesting composition, of course it's placement and where you want things to be, but it's also colors. And so you really need to think there needs to be an even distribution of lights and darks so that the eye can play around the canvas and look for the lighter areas. And here's another one. Say it's more towards here. I'm just going to do the petals first, and then I'll do the triangular bits. And then here's another one. See, it's to me, it feels like a puzzle, trying to find where pieces fit in. Okay, so that is my sketch, and now I'm going to add some ground colors. So with watercolors, you really need to pay attention to going from light to dark because they're translucent. So I have two different sets here of paints. I have watercolors and gouache hybrids that are like an intermediate between watercolors and gouache. And then I also have my gouache palette, which I like to use both at the same time. It really just depends on what colors I want to use. All right, so if I look at the background, I see a lot of light green, some yellow, a little bit of Naples yellow, and I see a lot of lilac and pale blues. So that's what I'm going to start with. I'm first going to be wetting my page. So I'm going to use a larger flat brush for that, and I'm just going to apply an even layer of water. I just like to do the background. You can apply water to the whole setting. You can also use masking fluid, but since this to me is just something quick and more about feeling, I'm not going to be using masking fluid. Masking fluid is kind of like a I don't know how you would describe it. My water wasn't the cleanest, so you see a bit of that. All right, so I have my water, and I love doing wet on wet. And wet on wet is a technique where you wet the page like we just did, and then you apply the color, and you can see how it starts to spread out. So I'm going to grab a bigger brush. This is a size 22 synthetic brush. And I'm going to start with my Naples yellow. And I'm just going to look at the areas where I think I see the lightest color and go from there. The advantage of working lightest to darkest is that you can always cover areas where you think another color would look better. Now here where this ladybug is red, I'm going to add lighter colors because that's going to be the most saturated area of color. And so that way it would play a nice contrast. So if you don't like the hard edges, what you can do is you clean your brush, you tap it dry-ish, and then you can lift some of the color so that it transitions nicely into the page and it doesn't leave harsh marks. But it really depends on what you prefer. I sometimes like leaving harsh marks, sometimes I don't. Really depends on what the feel is. It's like you lift it up a bit. Okay, so while it's still wet, I'm going to now do the light blue and lilac. So first I'll do the lilac. This will give that bokeh sense of a background. Bokeh is when you have a large opening of your lens, which is a small f-stop, And then you get that nice blurred background that always looks so pretty with just the subject in focus. I'm not going to overdo it. Now I'm going to do the light blue as well. And I'll be lifting some of that light change. And I think I'll do little splatters as well of this blue. Okay. Move it up here, move it out here. Good. Now I'm going to be doing the greens. I have several greens. I love green. Let's see. I think there are 3 here that are watercolors and 1 that is the gouache. So I'm going to start with this like apple green. I can't remember the name of it, but this is a watercolor. I'm just going to be adding it freely. And while it's wet, you can just lift it up, pat it with your rag, and just continue. I'm going to take my time here. If you see that your page is no longer wet, you can just apply a bit more water. Go from there. Okay, now I'm going to grab this like neon green and add some of it as well in different areas. There. And then the darker green. I love this green. Which is more on this side and on the bottom. This one right here is the gouache hybrid, but it acts just like a watercolor. Okay. So if you see any spots that you want to lift up, you can. It's just with a clean, somewhat drier brush. You can also lift up some of the water if there's too much there. Okay. So now I'm going to grab a thinner brush, still quite large, and I'm going to be adding the blue of the flowers. I'll be doing first a purpley wash, and then on top I'll be adding blue. And this brush always seems to have little hairs. Just adding the purple to all the petals. I'm going to see if there's any purple here. These tips seem to be a bit purple. Here's this flower still. And back here, some petals. And one's down here as well. Now I'm going to be adding the blue. And I'm going to really pay attention to where I see more blue and less blue. Like this bottom one has more blue than others. This one seems to have blue just like in the outer areas or in the where there's more of a shadow. This one seems to have quite a lot of blue in it. This petal here is quite dark. Petal here has some dark areas. Okay. And then these as well. Good. All right, so I'm going to be doing a time lapse of the rest of this painting. All right, so that is the finished piece on hot press paper. I hope you enjoyed this video, and again, if you're interested in any of my classes, either online or in person, the information will be below this video or on my website. See you next time, guys. Bye.